Now, I would like to welcome our second speaker, architect Farooq Ameen, who will present on city design.
It's a challenge to follow the poetic work of Rafiq Azam, so I'll try and do my best. First, I would like to thank Jalal for inviting me to come and speak. And you've asked me to talk about my journey, which I will try my best to do. But I have to say I'm so inspired by the support of BSRM and the extraordinary legacy that you've created and the generations that you've inspired and will continue to inspire. So my talk is going to be about city design, transforming communities together. It was in 1992 when I was up in the hills in Hollywood looking down at nearly 1,000 fires during the race riots which began between the African American community and the predominantly white police. I was fortunate enough to be part of the mayor's task force, and we went around the community documenting it and making plans for the city's development, which has ended up in the downtown Los Angeles that we know today. And this experience is extraordinary for me and has completely changed my perspective on conceiving plans for a community and then making it happen. Many of these plans that we have prepared is going to be resulting in an expansion of downtown Los Angeles. I have lived in many cities around the world. I was born in Dhaka, not too far from here. I grew up partly in Delhi, partly in Bangalore. I've worked in Berlin, Denver, and of course in Los Angeles. And I've taught in Lugano. But my architectural journey really began here in Dhaka and of course at Buet. But perhaps the strongest influence that I've had is being a student, one of the youngest ones, in the study group that we've talked about a lot. Saiful has spoken about it yesterday. And I remember taking the manifesto that you shared and trying to translate it into English way before we had Google Translate. And we had to struggle with words such as proportion. We had to struggle with words such as space. I think we spoke about it as calm from time to time. And the other thing that I would do is correspond with many individuals. Chetona actually organized several seminars. The first one was in collaboration with Yaga Khan program. And we were fortunate enough to have some really distinguished visitors from around the world, including the Professor Kenneth Frampton. And we've all looked at his great essay towards a critical regionalism, 6 points for an architecture of resistance. And for me, what really has stood out are two things. Of course, his principles on culture and civilization, but also the resistance of the place form. And you'll get to see a little bit of this as we move forward. My son has actually become a great friend of Kenneth Frampton, and for reasons that are unclear to me, when he was 4 years old, he started calling him Yusuf Ali. So when I speak to him now, I call him Yusuf Ali. This is another photograph from 1987, the year that I left. You'll recognize many of the individuals from right to left. There's Jalal Ahmed, Saiful Haq, our good friend Raziul Hassan, who passed away, Balkrishna Doshi, the late Balkrishna Doshi, the Pritzker Prize winner, the wife, Mrs. Raje, Manisha Doshi, Anand Raje. Doshi and Raje, of course, worked with Louis Kahn in Ahmedabad, Muzaffar Bhai, and the gentleman with a lot of hair to the extreme left, that's me. But clearly, as Saiful spoke about, and many others have spoken about, Mazharul Islam was really at the center of Chetona, and we were so inspired to be part of his world and learn from him. And of the many things that I was left with was this saying. He always said, you have to be a world man and a Bengali. And I took this literally with me. And although I have my beginnings in Bangladesh, right after I graduated, I worked on a small project in Dhanmondi, sitting in the office of diagram architects. Saiful and Jalal were very kind to give me a desk and the help of their draftspersons. And we created this small boutique called Ankur. And of course, we also had Chetana Patro. And I believe I wrote my first essay on the work of Mazharul Islam, his National Library. But this journey, which began in Bangladesh, went on to Los Angeles. And I tried to become that world man that Mazharul Islam spoke about. And so my work now takes me to different parts of the world. And I'm fortunate to have been inspired by him. Our work, whether it's in the form of urban design, architecture projects, publications, talks and so on, take us to different parts of the world. We still haven't been able to get to South America yet, so that's next on the menu, so to speak. I've always believed that an architect is involved sort of in a cycle, if you will. There's a process of advocacy, followed by urban design, followed by architecture. And clearly, Rafiq's work, especially with the park, suggests that you have to be an advocate, you have to go out and be with the community, and ultimately, with a lot of tenacity and purpose, you get to build what you wanted to build all along, and what you wanted to design all along. So my work actually, advocacy has been a big part of this. Some of the books that I've worked on include The South Asian Paradigm, which interestingly enough includes the work of diagram architects, 50 Under 50, Innovators of the 21st Century, which includes the work of Kashef. And then 50 Under 50, which has essays by so many of the Bangladeshi architects here. And this has also extended to lectures, whether at Harvard, at the TEHU in Berlin, or essays that people have written about the advocacy that I've done in different parts of the world. So about Dhaka, which is where it all began, I remember in 1987, I went to what was the tallest building in Dhaka at that time, and this is what I saw. It was a traffic jam, the likes of which I had never seen. Until, of course, I came back several years later, and the traffic jam looked very much like this. This, of course, is a result of development. And as we know, some of the largest cities, the fastest growing cities are all in Asia. And among them, the densest cities are in our part of the world, in South Asia and in East Asia. And this became an obsession with me, which was catapulted into this book called Decoding Asian Urbanism, when Ken Yang asked me to write a manifesto for Asian cities, how to design Asian cities. And I'll speak about that a little bit later. Kenneth Frampton has observed that the size of these cities are such, Tokyo, Mumbai, Bangkok, Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, and so on, at 15 million plus, 15 to 22 million and over, that the way we design, the way we have been planning, the way we have been designing, can no longer be effectively applied. And so we have to look at something that's different for the mediation of these urbanized regions. To the city that I've kind of adopted as my home for the last few years, for almost three or more decades, is an interesting one. And the historian Rainer Banham thought about Los Angeles as comprising of 4 ecologies. The foothills, everyone's seen the Hollywood sign, the flatlands, which extend to miles and miles of the city, and surfurbia, you know, the ocean side, the waterfront, and so on. But the part that's, I think, the most interesting about Los Angeles, and one that we're all familiar with, are these incredible freeways, Autopia. And in the 50s, there was the Centers Plan, which evolved around where these freeways came together. But way before that, LA had some of the most extensive railway networks in the world. In fact, you could go from Santa Monica, which is to the right here, all the way to San Bernardino on a ticket for 10 cents. All of this, with the advent of the automobile, was destroyed. And in fact, some of the state-of-the-art light rail cars were all bought, they were either destroyed or they were all bought by the city of Cairo. Cairo took all the trains and all the railway networks that LA sort of threw away. Today, the transit network in LA is much smaller. It looks something like this. But over the next, excuse me, over the next 20 years or so, it's going to expand to something like this, what you see here, 2040. And our work has actually involved 2 of these lines. One is called the Crenshaw line, which has now been implemented. In fact, the last station is opening next week. And then another line, which is still not being built, but will be built by the year 2028. It is called the West Santa Ana branch. And I would like to talk about these in the context of what I think of as being city design. And I think of city design as being a choreography of incremental site-specific urban interventions, which is designed to restructure the immediate vicinity of those interventions, very much like Rafiq did in Old Dhaka with that park, which has had this incredible impact throughout the community and so on. And so City Design Studio was formed. We are now in our 15th year, sort of focused on making these urban interventions, not only in LA, but in different parts of the world. And we think of city design as transforming communities, but transforming communities together with the community. So I'll begin by talking about the West Santa Ana branch transit corridor, transit-oriented development, strategic implementation plan, which nobody wanted to say. We instead started calling it Wasabi, which everyone can say. And what Wasabi did, this is the red line network, a simplified version of the red line network, and which began in downtown Los Angeles at the top and went all the way down to Artesia at the bottom. In fact, it went all the way to Santa Ana. Our client was the Federal Transit Administration, and the Federal Transit Administration funded the preparation of joint development studies and transit-oriented development plans for 12 stations along what you see is the purple segment of the line, the West Santa Ana line, the Wasabi line. And so our work involved 20 miles of transit corridor, 12 stations, 98 square mile impact. We went through 14 different jurisdictions from Los Angeles all the way down to Lakewood. You see the city of Downey in the middle. Downey is where Karen and Richard Carpenter grew up and sang those incredible songs that you all know about. And we prepared 12 of these station area plans or transit-oriented development plans. And our project was one of 28 projects to be completed by 2028. Sort of an agreement between Los Angeles County and the City of Los Angeles in preparation for the Olympics in 2028. So the way we began the plans was by looking first at the existing planning studies, by speaking with the community and learning from the community, by preparing a vision that's based on what the community wanted to have, looking at the economic viability of those plans, having a concept, preparing the actual plan, but then having some development strategies and then again a toolkit. And all of this was based on a vision that was prepared in conjunction with the community. I won't go into all the details, but we synthesized them into these 8 principles of being walkable, bikeable, safe, connected, dense, mixed use, compact, and integrating transit. And essentially what we did was we looked at what you see on the outside is a half-mile radius. What you see on the inside is a quarter-mile radius. The half-mile radius is about 502 acres. So we study the 502 acres and then come up with a plan for that smaller section, the quarter-mile radius. And the idea, of course, was not to prepare the same plan for every community. It is that every community is distinct, so it's one corridor which works as an economic unity, but distinct communities. And so 12 plans with 12 separate 12 separate identities. These plans looked at how the investment of transit structure would impact development. And so when the plan was finally prepared, it had the consensus of the community, it was economically viable, and it integrated the transit with it. What you see as the number 2 are 2 towers by Herzog and Demeron, which are part of this effort. So a part of sort of engaging the community had also to do with looking at what existed, but also looking at what was possible based on the viability of that community. So whereas you have very high density walkable mixed use, which is close to downtown, it's not quite the same. And so we had to prepare an implementation toolkit that took the area from what it existed as to what it could become. And this toolkit was comprised of different strategies, developing density, mixed use, and so on and so forth. And each of these station areas had a toolkit that was prepared that each community could integrate in order to come up with this very, very specific development. We proposed these 5 development typologies, which has now been implemented as part of the Federal Transit Administration's pilot program for TODs throughout the country. I'll just go through a couple of these. Okay. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to move along very, very quickly. I want to go on to another project, which is called the Intuit Dome Plaza development. And our client was, I don't know if some of you know him, his name is Steve Ballmer. He was the CEO of Microsoft after Bill Gates. He's also the either the 7th or the 6th or the 8th richest man in the world. A very, very passionate human being who loves basketball. And if you ever get to watch a YouTube of him at a basketball game, I would imagine that you would end up spending most of your time looking at him than at the basketball. He was a phenomenal client. And our site, which is near Los Angeles Airport, in fact, excuse me, it's about a half a mile east of the airport, at a site that's shown in red here. And it integrates, the site is adjacent to two other great venues. One is the SoFi Stadium, and the other one is the Great Western Forum. Steve bought the Forum because they were making trouble for him to build the Intuit Dome. But all three of these facilities are going to become part of the 2028 Olympics. And what Steve wanted, he wanted for us to create an urban oasis, and he wanted to be themed as basketball. So what we had was, we had a fairly regular sized piece of land adjacent to the Intuit Dome. We did not design the Intuit Dome, but everything else that you see around it, the parking structures, you'll see some bridges, you'll see various buildings, all of those are our work. And what we had to look at was how to take this parcel of land and look at the major pedestrian movement, which is the diagonal to the entrance of the Intuit Dome, which has 18,500 seats for basketball. We looked at three areas, three specific directions. One, of course, is from Century Boulevard, which is the street that's running east-west here. The other one is from the parking structure coming down. And how we conceived of this was as a whole experience, walking along a bridge and coming down the bridge onto sort of a built form that captured the movement, which is a band shell with a 70-foot by 40-foot LED screen, which you will see in a minute. Because of the geometry of the site and the movement of the people, each of these buildings are very, very different. And what we did was, we had a ribbon, which was a datum, 18 feet. I'm sorry, I'm speaking in imperial dimensions, but that's what we use in the US, unlike the rest of the world. An 18-foot from the ground datum that ties all of these pieces together. Of course, it wraps around the band shell, which is a different height altogether, but it's a one continuous ribbon that does that. We integrated a program which included a basketball court next to the band shell, and then what we began to call the Roman steps, but then we now call them the Clipper steps, which, yeah. And then all of those began to have programs. In blue, you have the team store, the Clipper store. Then the flesh-colored ones are restaurants and bars, and the bridges are purple. This is what it ultimately ended up looking like. This is still a rendering. But as you are coming along the bridge, sorry, so this is a rendering, but this is what it looks like in real life. So you have, again, you have the basketball court next to the band shell, the steps, this beautiful shaded device that you see above the steps, and the ribbon, if you will, all around. Again, the bridge to, number one is the bridge, number two is what we call the West Building. To the top right is another restaurant, number three, several restaurants, and so on and so forth. If we cut a section, this is what it would look like. The parking structure to the right, you take the pedestrian bridge, you come down the steps, and while you're doing that, you're constantly looking at the band shell. This is what it looks like in real life. It opened about 6 months ago. And what you see on the screen there is the incredible work of Rafiq Anadol, who is converts data into art. This is how the bridge is experienced during the day, and then at night, this is what it looks like. The model in red, that's my wife, and that's my son to the right. Again, a daytime shot of the band shell, and I'll try to see if this works. Oh, no. This was how we conceived of as the whole journey, if you will, coming over the bridge, coming down the steps. Part of it is a place where people can sit. Part of it you step down. These are the stairs to the right. There's an escalator all the way to the left. And the band shell has changed, as you can see. It was conceived one way here. It's different later on. This is what the steps and the pergola look like right now. The ribbon, if you will, which wraps around all the various buildings, the flagship and so on. Great public art. And this is what it looks like at nighttime if you're up in the sky in a drone or a helicopter. Let's see if I can make this work. This is what it feels like in real life. People spend more time in our plaza than they do in the basketball arena. The attendants have to come around and tell people to leave at the end of each game. That, by the way, is the person who called Kenneth Frampton Yusuf Ali, and it stuck. Yes. The next project I want to share very quickly is the Grand Panorama. It'll become really apparent why I'm calling it that. One of the most extraordinary things about Los Angeles is this incredibly benign, wonderful climate. And anyone who's an architect, I'm sure, has heard of the case study houses. This is Pierre Koenig's house, case study number 22, which is about this idyllic life on the hills, looking down on the city, a wonderful swimming pool. And we looked at how we might make this available to more people in a very dense environment. Now, I was at the Brack University this morning. Extraordinary work that you've done. A very dense urban university, just unique and extraordinary. Yeah. So we tried to see if we could do the same in the heart of Los Angeles. Our site was at the center of many of these transit lines. You can see the development. You see the yellow line, which is the transit line here. I'll try to see if this. What you can see, I'm going to walk away from the microphone, but you'll see Frank Gehry's. Let me see if I can make this work. No, it doesn't work. There's Frank Gehry's Disney Hall. There's Dillard Scofido's Broad Museum. There's Arata Isuzaki's Museum of Contemporary Art. And then there's I.M. Pace Towers, and I'm going to just walk over and point to them. So if we look in one direction, looking south, there are these incredible commercial office towers. And if we look the other way, there are slightly lower residential buildings. We had a very complicated site owned by 3 separate owners. Enwave is a Canadian private utility company providing district cooling. The metro site is owned by Metro, LA Metro. And the part that says WVAC is owned by the city but vacated street. And the interesting thing is that if you want to do any private development here, you have to have some agreement with Enwave but then you get to lease all of the land, which means that you can only rent, you cannot buy. And because it's publicly held land, you have to have some level of affordability. So 22% of the units are affordable. And this is how we did that. So the site, very interesting site, very odd shape, about a 50-foot difference between 2nd Street, which is to the left, and 1st Street, which is to the right here, on either side. Because of the metro box, there's a whole portion of the site that we could not build on, and essentially what you see as the footprint, the white footprint, is where we could build. And so we took a portion of that, we extruded it as a uniform extrusion, if you will, and then based on the direction of the sun, the wind, the views, we articulated the massing. And then, of course, we broke it down to different levels. The plates, the floor plates, then began to articulate the plates in different ways. And this is essentially what it looks like. So the portion that is blue, those are more modular floor plates, and I'll share with you how these are just a few plates, if you will. There are actually, I think, 4 different plates which sort of sit on one another and make it look very whimsical. Each of these, it's terraced down, so you have the same swimming pool that Pierre Koenigshout had, but now it's available to everybody. And then the yellow portion to the right is much more customized, and the rents are higher. So the customized units pay for the more modular, affordable units lower below. The pink shape, the flesh-colored tone is commercial, galleries, and so on. And what you see in gray down at the bottom is the actual station, the station box. And then what you see in yellow are the tubes along which the transit lines move. So these are plates that kind of alternate, the floor plates, and when you put them one over the other, it creates this whimsy for the buildings. Yeah. This is what the site looks like. It's a view from the metro station. Wonderful lifestyle, at least in the renderings. And then this lifestyle of living up in the sky. As you can see, it's a fairly regular floor plan. It's a double-loaded corridor that wraps around the site. And then the footprints get smaller and smaller and much more customized as you go up. And what you see here is the station box and the tunnels, but a very regular parking layout. And I'll share a little bit more about this parking layout. So if you've done parking structures, you know you need a ramp between levels, but we have no ramps here. But how did we get to have parking structure with no ramps? I'll get to that in a minute, but again, this is the station box in the middle where you cannot build, and then the parking structure that wraps around the station box, and then the section through the tower. And okay, 5 minutes? Oh my God, I'm just going to go very quickly. So they're big pilotis on a raft foundation, which keeps this project here. And the way we have the way the parking works is because of this 50-foot difference between different levels, you enter the parking structure at different levels, and the result of that is, 1, you have less expensive parking structure, but 2, as the parking demand is lowered, you can convert them to other uses. Because obviously you cannot build on a sloping floor plate, but you can convert if it's a flat plate. I'll just go through this very quickly. This was the exhibition Decoding Asian Urbanism. So one of my colleagues So we had actually an existing, it was a gallery, a lighting gallery for a lighting manufacturer. And the owner of the gallery told us that we could not remove these existing exhibits, these existing exhibit modules. It became this exhibition that you see here. And we designed this in a slightly different way. We designed it cinematically. We had on our team someone who was a filmmaker, and she asked us, well, what is the experience that you want people to have when you arrive, which is provocation and intrigue, and then what do you want the people to leave with? And that kind of guided the whole design of the exhibition. So we had a series: provocation, immersion, curiosity, serenity, inquiry, discovery, and then sort of an Instagram moment. And so we had this kind of sequence, if you will, but we had to figure out a way to place this linear experience within a very different geometry. And so we created this experience, and we asked permission to remove a couple of these pieces which we could not break. And this essentially became the floor plan for the exhibition. It has, so there's many of these images are in the book Decoding Asian Urbanism, which is in the store. The immersion portion had 3 cities in it. It had Dhaka, it had Hong Kong, and it had Tokyo, and it had the Shibuya crossing. The curiosity portion, this was one of the most widely visited exhibitions that the museum has ever had. The Instagram moments for everyone, very, very important. And then this is one of the films that we made. You can't hear the sound, but I think you can experience the noise and the chaos and sort of the very chaotic order of the city of Dhaka, which sort of was part of this piece. And I think I have to stop there, right? I was going to speak about this issue, but I'll stop there.
Another 2 minutes.
Huh?
Another 2 minutes.
Another 2 minutes, okay. Another 2 minutes. So this is a project in Shanghai. So to give you some orientation, what you see sort of zigzagging here is the Huangpu River. It originates in the Bund in downtown Shanghai, where you have those extraordinary towers. And for reasons that are not clear to me, at this point, it just does a turn, a 90-degree turn. And our site is what you see here as phase 2. It is adjacent to the International High-Tech Zone, which is the home of Intuit, Microsoft, Coca-Cola, the China home of these companies, and the overseas homes of many American universities, including USC and so on and so forth. So what we had was this site. This is sort of a big development. Our portion of the site was the portion that you see, which has a lot of the buildings, the denser buildings. And this is the master plan that we prepared. This site is at the terminus of one of the major transit lines from the Bund down to the southern portion of Shanghai, which was originally agricultural land. And so we had to ask ourselves, how do we bring this nature back into a very dense urban environment? And we walked around the agricultural site. This is my colleague, Peter Fink, from London. He's a lighting designer. And the developer, Mr. Shen, he wanted tall towers to represent development. And we said, you cannot do tall towers here. This was a place, a community for young people, and you had to create a place that would be attractive to young people. And so we were inspired by, in Xintiandi, Shanghai, you have the traditional courtyard homes. And although we could not recreate the homes, we could emulate the principles of these, which was to create courtyards where people could filter through the project. And so we developed this master plan with courtyards, and then you see these green strips which allow people to move through the courtyards and connect back to the waterfront and to the extension of the waterfront as it goes through the site. I can tell you that we designed everything here except what you see as this big blob to the south, which was designed by, number 5 was designed by Gensler, so we have no part in that. Everything else is us. And this is the environment we wanted to create. We wanted to take those tall towers and lay them flat on the ground. This project, this is sort of a nighttime version of that, and various scenes. And I can speak more to the projects when we are in discussion. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Architect Farooq Ameen, for the fascinating presentation.